It's been a long 9 months with my Nintendo Switch, and I feel like I've finally been able to justify a revisiting of the Nintendo Switch. More games have come out, along with some good accessories, and I'd like to talk about my long-term experience with it, as I've collected my thoughts over all this time. A question that was debatable at its launch day, but now one that will receive a straight answer. Is the Nintendo Switch finally worth it? Let's dive in. The exterior design consists of plastic from all sides of the device, or even the screen itself is made out of plastic. On the front, you'll find yourself with both Joy-Cons, which I will touch more on soon, and the 6.2-inch 1280 by 720p multi-touch display. The back consists of the Nintendo Switch logo, the kickstand which houses a microSD card entry, and the cooling vents. On the top, you'll find the power button, volume rocker, cooling vent, headphone jack, and the cartridge slot. Finally, on the bottom, there's a USB-C port. As to the Joy-Cons, you've got your usual controls consisting of the ZL and L triggers, the minus button, the analog stick, the 4 directional arrow buttons, and a screenshot button for the left Joy-Con. The right Joy-Con consists of the ZR and R triggers, plus button, YXAB buttons, another analog stick, and the home button. The speakers sounded pretty decent at first to me, but I realized that they just sound okay for gaming. For content consumption, they do fall short. The Nintendo Switch features an NVIDIA Tegra CPU, 4GB of RAM, and 32GB of storage that is expandable to up to a 2TB microSD card, and a 4310 mAh battery. Now, this is where we start getting to the more interesting parts. The Nintendo Switch features 3 different modes for playing, which are handheld, docked, and tabletop modes. Let's talk about the experience of playing in each mode. Let's start with the portable mode, which is my favorite mode to play on. The Switch felt a bit heavy at first due to its larger size compared to other handhelds, but I got used to it after a while and doesn't look so strange when you play in public. The buttons do feel a little small, but the Joy-Cons do feel solid, allowing for a comfortable gaming experience. While in handheld, you'll be playing most games in 720p, and at this screen size, most games look sharp enough. Next is tabletop mode, which is by far my least favorite way of playing. In this mode, you can play with the Joy-Con separately, and it's actually pretty comfortable when it comes to playing more casual games. For more intense ones like Skyrim, I'd much rather play with the Pro Controller if I'm playing in this mode. It's okay, but it's limiting since in this mode you can't charge while playing natively. I only play in tabletop mode when I'm trying to play a game with a friend on the same screen, using both Joy-Cons as 2 separate controllers, though. Lastly, there's docked mode. When you dock the Switch, it is set to charge and allows for the Switch to run at max power without running out of energy, with some games being upscaled to 1080p if the Switch can actually support them. In this mode, if you've only bought a stock Nintendo Switch, then chances are that you're playing with the Joy Grip. I find it to be pretty comfortable, though a tad small but definitely not unusable. However, when switching over to the Pro Controller, you almost don't want to go back to the grip. It feels like a full-size controller that delivers a more complete home console experience. And I love it. As for the game library, if you're somebody who has held back on buying the Nintendo Switch because of a lack of titles and don't mind ports, then you'll find yourself at home with the Switch. We've got a very good library thanks to third-party support, so let's talk about which games I've decided to pick up and how they perform. Let's start with Skyrim. This is a game that I personally never get tired of playing, and the fact that it's portable now means that it is a lot more versatile for playing. In all modes, this game runs beautifully and looks very good. It is a special edition, so it comes with all of the DLC and the graphics improvements. I don't like using the motion controls for this game, but they are still there as an option if you're someone who prefers to play with Joy-Cons detached. So far, it's been a great experience. Super Mario Odyssey is one of the Nintendo Switch exclusives that delivers on what I'd consider a very fun story to follow. In handheld, it looks a little pixelated, but that changes quickly in docked mode. It's just good, casual fun, and is friendly for use in every mode that the Switch offers. Doom is a game that everybody was surprised to see coming to the Nintendo Switch. It runs at 30 frames per second and looks blurry in handheld, and a tad better in docked mode. However, this is still a very enjoyable game that runs pretty well, and I've loved being able to take it on the go, as it's still a great pickup in my opinion. Fire Emblem Warriors is very well optimized for the Nintendo Switch, so despite all of the character models that show up on screen, it runs beautifully and looks fantastic in both handheld and docked mode. Thanks to the campaign, it's still lots of fun. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 was another game that received an update to work with motion controls, which are fun to use when you want to perform a Kamehameha, and while in handheld, it does look a bit pixelated. It looks much better when docked. Trust me. Still, an experience I'd always be open to come back to from a beloved series. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was one of the most hardware-intensive games on the Switch thus far. While frame drops are not too frequent, resolution drops certainly are in handheld mode. It plays well, but it does look a bit pixelated. However, in docked mode, the game looks beautiful and is certainly a game that would be best played on the big screen. The Sky of 5 is a very fun turn-based JRPG that plays very well in any mode, though I prefer to play it in handheld due to it being a more relaxing game to play. This to me is a great thing, as turn-based RPGs are one of my favorite game genres, and more will be released to complete the experience. As for games that have touch support, if you're interested in using the Switch as a tablet, there's Severed. It's a fun little game that can only be played in handheld, but when playing it, it feels very smooth due to how quickly the screen reacts to your touch inputs. It's quite intuitive, and I look forward to seeing more games that will offer this functionality. However, how does the Switch function as a media device? Well enough, I'd got to say. Watching content on it is nice on handheld, but it feels much better when the Switch is docked. Here, I'll be talking about my experience using Hulu since it's the only streaming service available at the time of recording this video, aside from Nico Nico. Hulu works fantastically so far, and as I said, it works best while docked, mostly because Hulu doesn't accept any touch inputs from the display, which is unfortunate, but it's still a stepping stone to getting more apps like YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and more. So yeah, the Switch's usability aspect is expanding. It's easy to carry with you on any trip, and it's very convenient for multiplayer games on the go, by just taking off the Joy-Cons and handing one to a friend. With the current games library, it's also very difficult to get bored if you don't mind ports. And the buttons placement is just right for me, and they all feel very satisfying, so regardless of me playing in handheld or docked mode, I'm always comfortable. And if you're curious about games we haven't gotten yet or probably won't get in the West, then just know that you can create a Japanese eShop account, and with it, either buy games that have only released in Japan, or just try out some demos. I downloaded Monster Hunter Double Cross and Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and they both look great. Monster Hunter plays very well in all modes, and Dragon Quest is still lots of fun. I recommend you give them a try. So, despite my excitement for what the Switch is and will be in the future, I unfortunately have my gripes. Some can be fixed through software and some are hardware issues. First, the hardware. The kickstand is pathetic. It's a cheap piece of plastic that only holds the Switch down on a perfectly leveled surface. On anything else, it'll fall apart. The dock scratches the back of the Switch, which makes it difficult to keep it in pristine condition. The speakers are better than the 3DS, but still very lacking in loudness, and the flap for sealing the cartridge is consistently refusing to clip in properly. As for software, there's the issue with the UI being totally bare bones and lacking of any personality. We still don't have any web browser and other popular streaming apps aside from Hulu, which is astonishing 9 months after its release. There's no real Bluetooth support to allow for wireless headsets to be connected. Friend codes are still the only way to add people. And lastly, I can't use the USB connector to connect my USB-C headphones. What this means is that no matter what, I have to carry a silly adapter for my phone, despite both of them having a USB-C port. Now, let's take a moment to discuss the placement of the Switch in Nintendo's console lineup. Is it replacing the 3DS? Not yet. In my opinion, there is still great value in getting a 3DS versus getting a Switch, especially if you're an RPG fan. There are plenty to choose from in the 3DS's library, but the future seems to lie on the Switch, as I'm sure that through the years, developers will shift their interest into the Switch due to its portability aspect. The fact that there's an HD screen on the Switch could even count as an incentive for developers to work on higher resolution games than was previously permitted by the 3DS's hardware. A lot of opportunities can be taken advantage of with the Switch, and there's a great future coming for it. At last, we've reached the conclusion. The Nintendo Switch debuted with a fantastic game, but there was the issue of only being one. Me, like many, were skeptical about buying the Switch, and I even considered selling it at one point since I did not see any value from it. That changed around September, when games I found interest in finally started to come out. So yeah, I've had far too much fun with the games I mentioned, and many more, and that goes for many others too. The Switch is absolutely worth it, and if you were an early adopter and were afraid that you wouldn't find anyone to play with, just remember, you're no longer alone.